Hi-Rez have once again teased us with a new champion for Paladins, and this champion is called Sha Lin, and he's known as the Desert Wind. So I got all this footage from the dev preview and condensed it just for the hero preview, and I'm going to give some of my own opinions of how it'll fit into the meta, and also about the abilities it has. You might be thinking, hang on a second, we already have Cassie, a archer in the game. However, Cassie isn't exactly a normal archer. She fires spirit arrows and they basically fire like a semi-automatic rifle, or like the devs have been teasing or playing with the idea that she might have a crossbow. Sha Lin actually has to draw back on his bow, and that rolls on to his left click. Basically, he draws the bow back, and the further he draws back, over 1.5 seconds to get maximum, he gets higher damage. It goes from 300 damage at the least pulled back, and 1100 at the most pullback. They didn't explicitly say what damage type it would be, but we can only assume it's direct damage. There's also gravity fall off. What that means is that the shorter you hold, the more drop there's going to be on the arrow, so it'll be way harder to hit with the shortly pulled arrows, and even though you might be getting loads of them out, they'll be doing less damage and dropping loads. Maybe only useful if you're right next to somebody. Fully pulled, it still has a little bit of drop it seems, but fully pulled up it seems very minor. There is actually a 35% move speed penalty when you're fully drawn on the bow, and this could really be the kicker, especially if you're going up against another enemy sniper like a Cassie. They're going to have quite an easy time sniping you if you're slowed down like that, or an enemy Cassie or an enemy Eevee who does a lot of damage. And that's something else to mention, the character has 2000 health base, and that is rather low, so it is a squishy character. There's no clip size at all, it's basically just like Grover's axes, you just throw them forever, well in this case you fire them forever. On the right click, it's actually imbues the power of your arrow with an impaler arrow, and basically if they're close to a wall, it will impale them to the wall and they'll be stunned. Which is very cool, I may add, but the actual knockback doesn't look too far, but it'd be interesting to see whether there's cards that make this push further back. Also, secondarily, it also gives a pillar. The pillar can either block enemies from getting through a doorway, for example, but you can actually go through that doorway, you can jump over it, but the enemies can't. It can also add some cover, or it just works as a big pillar that you can launch into the game, but mostly for blocking enemies. Going back to the stun actually, they said that Fernando could actually be stunned to a wall and it would get rid of his shield and it goes through the shield, so that's quite interesting as well. As in, it will hit him and move him back slightly, but I think, or I understand, that it won't actually unload his shield unless he hits the wall and gets stunned. The pillar part might be an extra escape for the character, but how effective this wall stun will be, I'm not entirely sure, as a lot of the action does happen outside, but we'll just have to see. It just seems that, but mostly it seems that it'll be quite difficult to actually stun people with how far they're being knocked back at the moment and how often you're actually inside. Something that is cool though, if you look at the pillars when they die, they sort of crumble into sand, so he's sort of like, does sort of magic with sand I suppose. Moving on to his F, basically he goes backwards, he gets thrown backwards, almost like a hop or a jump or a lunge, and leaves a copy of himself in front of the enemies. What they said is that at the moment it's just got this very basic sort of generic pose where they put their arms out in a T, but that will actually be replaced and it will become, they'll be actually taunting or doing emotes in front of your enemies, which would be rather funny. It'd be interesting if you bought the emotes and those emotes would be shown to the enemies, so maybe piss them off if you were doing taunts all the time. But what's most interesting is that you go into stealth for a very short time when you are knocked back, which gives you a little extra time to escape, and with that illusion and with you being invisible, it either gives you time to get away or to line up another shot, because you don't break the invisibility until you fire, which could give him a little bit of an advantage over a Cassie, for example. You might be actually using this cloak before if you engage with an enemy sniper, as it might give you the edge that you need to overcome them, or using it on enemies. I don't think it'll just be in close quarters, it'll probably work in medium long ranges too. Although the distance traveled does leave to the imagination how he'll escape in any sort of sticky situation when a flanker comes calling, or another enemy damage is coming for them. it might be very hard to escape really with distance. And what the devs mentioned is that Illuminate will now be more valuable, as both Sky and now Sha Lin will be invisible characters and be able to be countered slightly by Illuminate, the ability that lets you see invisible people closer. The Q ability actually plants you in place so you can't move, and you fire 65% faster, or you draw the bow 65% faster. And imagine 1,100 damage hits going out constantly. It's going to be a wrecker if the enemy don't react to it. But I do feel that in a lot of games, you are going to be trying to watch out for this Sha Lin and be marking him on your targets and saying, we can't let this guy wreck our death ball. But we'll just have to see how the damage works out in game and whether or not they get off their shots very often. It might be a bit like the Androxus ultimate without being in the sky, so that you get off a lot of damage, but you're also very vulnerable. And with Androxus, obviously, you're harder to hit because you're in the air and you might not notice them. But with Sha Lin, you can go invisible before you pull it off. But you're still going to be somewhere on the map on the levels where most people can see you. So finally, the ultimate, the omega of every champion. So this is Heat Haze, and basically it'll stealth your movement, and your movement speed will be buffed by 30%, and your draw speed will be 50% faster. And what happens every time that you fire out of invisibility is a mirage or illusion comes in front of you, and you go back to invisibility, like the right-click ability without lunging you backwards. Alyssa did say it was every 2 seconds, but it did seem on the stream that they just spammed it. They had almost an army of mirages just around them, and whether or not that's a bug or intended, I'm not entirely sure. But either way, it'll mean that you can fully pull back your bow, fire off, have another illusion, go back invisible again, and keep doing that and confusing your enemies. It seems like this ultimate won't be putting out too much damage, too differently to what you normally put out, but has some potential for you to escape as well as do damage at the same time, using your illusions to just get out of there. All in all, I do wonder about this hero, how they're exactly going to fit in. With their ultimate, it gives you the option to go in close and personal, but mostly you'll probably be a sniper or medium ranger, and you're going to be quite vulnerable to flankers like Androxus or Eevee coming after you. Even if you can go invisible, if they get on your back and they get the drop on you, they'll be following you and going probably quite fast as well, seeing as Eevee can just teleport to in front of you and Androxus can fly past you. They might be able to just follow you even if you go backwards into your illusion. And unlike Cassie with their roll, you don't have much of a chance to roll around near the point and get lots of hits off. And actually, Cassie does pretty much more damage every second than this character does. And it doesn't actually seem, I didn't see on the stream any headshots. Whether or not that's going to be a feature, if there's going to be a headshot bonus, I'm not too sure, but there wasn't one that popped up on the dev stream, although they did seem to be aiming for the body mostly. I don't know whether the person that was demoing it was actually a very good shot, or if they were just intentionally doing that. Who knows? Again, if a team has a Cassie and this character, the enemy players might think about getting Illuminate, or at least one flanker might get Illuminate just to chase Sha Lin down. But either way, it seems like it'll be pretty cool, and we won't really know until live and how it plans out against players on the live servers. It's just how it happens. It's just how it is, and in some ways, it's nice that this has been announced now, and I think we'll probably have it in a week or two on the actual servers. Unlike some other games where you have an ARG that's lasted for months. It's interesting that Hi-Rez are just releasing a character. There's no sort of like hype, no build up, it's just, we're going to put this character out and this is what we want. I think a lot of people, probably a lot of the vocal Overwatch fans, are going to compare this to Hanzo. Again, I've given all my arguments in my Overwatch versus Paladins videos, and why I prefer Paladins, because it's quite a different game. And in this case, it's the archetype of a bowman. That's actually a bowman. Obviously, it does fire a lot like Hanzo in the left click, but all the other abilities, not like Hanzo's at all. Nothing like it, actually. It's hard to compare the abilities to anything, really. Maybe even Hi-Rez have been a little bit cautious to make them quite different and make them a bit wacky. And in honesty, I like the fact that the abilities in the game are so wacky, like having a pillar that comes out of the ground. And also the fact that the right clicks are getting more like sort of properties. Like Madamba has his reload as a stun. Like here, if you pin somebody against the wall, it gives them a stun versus a pillar in the wall. There's two different properties to that right click. I think Sha Lin is Chinese or Chinese inspired, whereas Hanzo is actually Japanese. Let the comments begin in the comment section. Anyway, what does everyone else think about the champion? Is it something that you're looking forward to, or is it something that you don't think really fits into the game, or do you think it's going to change the meta up, or do you think it's going to make the game much better? Something else that they also announced in OB36 was changing the maps a bit, and on the Timber Mill map, they've improved it, like visually, they've added loads of bits, making it more like a timber mill, but they've also added more areas to fall off the map, and in my opinion, that's sort of giving a bit more power to heroes that aren't purely damage. Things like Bomb King and Drogos and things like that can push enemies backwards, and there's more power to the control element of the game, whereas at the moment it's quite focused on just pure damage. So we'll just have to see how that pans out. Anyway, I'm looking forward to OB37. I hope you all enjoyed this video. Be sure to let me know by liking the video or disliking it if you thought it was absolutely rubbish. And subscribe for more Paladins videos. I've actually got a Cassie guide for tomorrow that I was going to upload tonight, but then I thought, well, this has just come out, so let's just do this quickly. Also, I'm doing my prize draw for the pumpkin skins, the Halloween skins. There's 500 entries, so I've got to read through them all. And I just haven't had enough time to do that, so it'll probably be by tomorrow that I finish that. But I did give out the Triggerman book skins that I did in the Twitter competition, as that was just a random name generator, and I've announced that on Twitter. I can't think of the names off the top of my head. Anyway, again, thank you all very much for watching. Until next time, Joshino.